May that one protect us both. May that one nourish us both. May our study be invigorating and full of energy. May our study be vigorous and effective. May we not mutually, unnecessarily argue with each other. And peace, peace, peace be unto all. So we'll pause a little bit to invite any questions. The purpose of this Vedanta series is to deal with the things that are important here. That is, if you have some question that arises in the mind, and the answer may be useful, though maybe not always to the broader participants.
I was going back over the Gita, and I was reading chapter 10. It's sort of like Vibhuti, I think, like divine manifestations. Maybe now I haven't got this right, but I'd say like nearly half the chapter is on where there's examples are given of attributes. A lot of them are from other types of beings. Like, because I'm not Indian, I'm pretty poor on the mythology and the sort of cosmology, if you know what I mean. And but what I get out of it is a very, is how you get a very sort of deep sense of of incredible, the incredible variety of manifestation. So I was just wondering, like, for the pale faces, should we try and engage with with knowing more, trying to educate ourselves a little anyway about about the mythological, or if I don't know if that's the right word, but all the different types of being, like the Rudras, etc., etc.
Okay, thank you. So that's a good question. So let me try to summarize the purport of your question. 10th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita is dedicated to divine manifestations, yoga of divine manifestations everywhere. And much of those manifestations are described in certain mythological ways. And should we familiarize ourselves with the mythology in order to understand this? The simple answer to your question is no, unless you really want to. But then you have to look at the deeper understanding. Even if you're familiar with the mythology, the whole purpose of mythology is to tell us a simple way that everybody, the general public, can understand. And understand what? Understand the deeper philosophical issues and the practical implications of them. We are exhorted to love God. Don't forget, the chapter that commences, 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, is dedicated to this question of love of God, because it is seen to be the easiest and most convenient for all of us. And then the next question will come, how can we love some entity that is unseen, that has no moving parts in space, and that has no evolution in time? No observable change occurs in this entity. And so when we ask, please give us evidence of God, then the standard answer, of course, is to say, do you not see all around you God is present? A short way of saying it is, God is a creator. Can you observe his creation? And the creation is evidence of the creator. Of course, with a skeptical mind, that doesn't really hold currency, because you can find many, many different optional explanations for the universe. One of the most absurd, probably, or way out explanations is that the universe is a kind of self-perpetuating machine. And we know that a perpetual motion machine is not possible given the laws of physics as we understand them. You can't have a self-generating thing that culminates in supreme intelligence, a manifestation of consciousness that we see, and it exhibits itself in you listening to this with a questioning mind and me trying to explain something and referring to scriptures. So we have to find some other kind of explanation. Previously, just in a small discussion there with Jean, we were talking about the COVID virus. Many people are tempted to find inner calamity, but not much inner glory. Inner calamity only, some explanation from attributed to an entity that is an extra cosmic entity above the clouds somewhere. The ancient Jewish people took this up and felt that anything that was against them would be some kind of mission or sending a message from a chieftain god, a god who is rewarding and punishing. And we don't rhyme or reason the justice of it. We just accept some entity like that, and our obedience to that entity, our giving tribute to that entity, is a necessary way of avoiding calamities in our life. Of course, the other way of looking at it is to see all these manifestations as evidence of love. We love God because God is lovable. And what is the evidence of that? That entity pouring himself here, pouring himself there. And this pouring out is what we call divine manifestations. Our whole universe is nothing more than a manifested variety of that same entity. If we take it like that, get away from a creator that is jealous and punishing, and see that there's only one entity. As I always say, there's no need to look for a Mrs. Spider when we look at the whole universe. This manifestation comes just like a spider weaves a web from its own entity, from its own self. And catch reference to this in the Upanishads. So it is necessary, therefore, to highlight all the things that we miss. And in order to assist us in this, from the 7th chapter onwards, 7th chapter, 8th chapter, the 10th chapter, the 11th chapter, the 7th, the 9th, the 10th, and the 15th chapters of the Bhagavad Gita gives us a whole range of understandings so that we can increase our appreciation, our love, and our worship. Now, fortunately, I translated verses from the 7th, 9th, 10th, and 15th. And so to Dermot, I would have to say that if you have a copy of that, this will assist you. So I want to go through these. I'm going to step back from the 10th, step back to the 7th. First of all, the whole translation begins from another stanza which says, which can be translated, praise the Lord for his wonders never cease. We should just look around at the whole universe and be completely in a position of awe and wonder. And all this comes from a spark, as it were, of that radiant splendor that religion calls God. And everything has sprung from him. The question, therefore, of Creator God does not arise in this. Even last week, when we read an extract from that Bhagavatam, last message of Krishna, that is a separate book described in this way, a set of teachings to Uddhava. Sri Krishna is about to depart the world, and Uddhava wants a last final message from him. All the request for the message comes from our personal understanding of why is the world productive of pain? Why do we have to struggle in this way? We can update it and say, why is there such thing as a COVID virus? Why are people suffering? Why are some people suffering, others are not? Why is it that people are COVID tested positive and have no symptoms, but others suffer deeply? And we have to ask these questions because the question why has two links. One is it's a past question, it's related to some past event, and there's an automatic registration. There must be a causal chain of events that produces what we have now. Now we can explore the causal aspect of it, and if we can reduce it back to one particular item, that is the way we think. Earlier today, we were discussing some particular sufferings that some people are going through worldwide. And much of this can be traced to those who can cleverly do that, to previous experiences in their previous life. But that really doesn't nail the cause, because in a previous life, our behavior was a reflection of our thinking. Was it uplifting thinking, upraised thinking? We always have to be cognizant when we talk of the Bhagavad Gita, the 6th chapter, that a man raise himself by himself, and him not lower himself by himself. He alone is a friend of himself, or he alone is an enemy of himself. And that means that our attention can only be steered in one way or another, given a limitation of time. And if we habitually allow the attention to wander into areas which really are egoistic, either egoistic laziness or egoistic aggression. But there's another alternative. We can take our attention and we can steer it toward such wonderful things as love, generosity, discernment, detachment. All of these avenues are available for us to steer our attention. Oh, why is it that we don't do it? And it's because on the positive side, we are not observing the positives. We are not thinking that this world is an emanation from one entity. We're thinking it's somehow separate. There's a wonderful series of verses called Desiderata. It's sitting in St. Paul's Cathedral in London. Small thing. It says, we are a child of the universe. We have a right to be free. When we don't think in ways like this, in universal ways, we come into some trouble. Now there's one devotee there, Ophelia. She's there tuning in Portugal. Some others tuning in from the UK. Some tuning in from France. Some tuning in from England. Some tuning in from Northern Ireland. All over the world. This wonderful situation that we're in of a worldwide web as a solution to communication. And how does it work? There's not several webs. There's only one worldwide web, and we are all tuning into it. All our answers are found in the highest possible generalizations. All our answers are found in oneness, not in separateness. As soon as we go in for separateness, we get into trouble. We see the world as a separated, fragmented thing, trying to deal with it. And then when more than one thing somehow comes in on our head, we start getting into difficulties, start panicking. We start feeling, I alone have to deal with this. Nobody is supporting me. An internal dialogue occurs. It's a dialogue with yourself only. And the person who can rescue you from it is yourself. That is why in the 6th chapter it states, let a man raise himself by himself. Let him not lower himself by himself. He alone is his best friend. He alone is his worst enemy. So we have got an internal instrument. We call it this antahakarana, internal instrument. What we call the mind is really an instrumental thing that we can use to raise ourselves up or lower ourselves down. And we have got this to grasp the truth. Truth about what? Truth about anything. When properly handled, it'll reveal the truth for us. It is there for our convenience, divided into two seemingly separate things, internal and external. What's an external truth? The fact of you sitting here. The wall, the picture, the emblem behind. All of this is external truth. External truth, the whole observable universe. We can see it through a telescope even, to the very furthest reaches beyond the normal range of the eye. And then this internal instrument is able to grasp some subtle things, internal things, not only things on the wall and so on, but sounds and touches and tastes and pressures, all these various other objects of perception already there. So this internal apparatus is capable of receiving everything. If that's true, then should we not get all our knowledge in one go? Shouldn't it all come simultaneously? The instrument being there, the object being there, all the factors necessary for our knowledge being there. Why should we not get all the knowledge simultaneously? We don't get such an experience. We only get one thing at a time because it's regulated in this way. This attention is like a very sensitive probe. It explores one thing at a time. Otherwise, we'll just be completely overwhelmed and inundated. There's something like a distributor arm in an engine, a car engine, with electrical points there and rotating one arm, all in a different kind of sequence to operate different pistons. One piston down, another piston up, other pistons down, two pistons up, other ones down. In this way, it fires like that. So our attention is like that. With all this available to us, we can at least steer our attention toward something that is glorious, something that we didn't really notice properly before. Not allowing the attention just to be self-regulated. Self-regulated means non-regulated. It means it wanders here, wanders there. Can we not, for at least a few moments, take it and steer it in a particular direction, something that uplifts the mind? So all these stanzas contained in chapters 7, 9, 10, and 15 of the Bhagavad Gita are designed to tell us, my dear fellow, why didn't you look here? Why didn't you look there? You seem down, you seem depressed, you seem to be struggling, things seem to be overwhelming you, all right? Why don't you take this internal instrument, take its attention aspect, and steer it here and steer it there? So this is how the divine glories are sung, and they're sung, laid out in such a way that they can be sung in a Gregorian chant style. This is to accommodate the Roman Catholics here in Ireland. So thou art the taste in water, it begins in chapter 7. You don't require any mythology to understand that. But when you just casually accept water, what is water? Most of the body, human body, 70% plus, is water. We can only think because of this medium of water which is there. It acts as a kind of electrolysis medium. So water is required. Water is life. Without water, no life. And where we find water, we happen to be living here in a country called Ireland, which is called the Emerald Isle. It's so green because of the abundance of water. According to our meteorological report this afternoon, we'll have rain plus rain plus rain, and people waste this water because it's there in such abundance. In the corner of our hall, we have a drain pipe from the roof. Because it's so well insulated, when it rains, you'll hardly hear anything. Being from Africa, and a miserly nature when it comes to water. I want to take all that water and store it somewhere. But then what's the point? It'll go into the ground and somebody else will use it. In Africa, water is sparse. People walk for miles and miles and miles to get this precious resource water, which is dwindling because of the different shift in our ecological system, greenhouse effects and so on. All this climate change has made water a scarcity in many places. And even in Ireland from time to time, we worry. We worry if we never got rain for some 3 days or something. What is wrong? The gods are not pleased with us. In Africa, the way you get water is to tap into it through a borehole. You drill a hole in the ground, much less expensive than making a big well. With this borehole, you lower a pipe, and then you lower a pump, and the pump produces water. Or in the old days, you get a manual pump. You pump it like this, and with hydraulic mechanism, it comes up. It gets displaced. And you get your water, you put it in a bucket. You won't waste anything. That water is there for drinking. It is there for washing, bathing. It is there for cooking. What a precious resource this is. Now here it's told, when you taste that water, the very refreshing sapidity in it, the very nature of the water itself, its very life-giving essence. I am that. Not I'm in that. Thou art the taste in the water, the very life essence of it. This thing that we take for granted. You open a tap, very casually drink the water. What a great science is there to bring it to your tap. And much of the water that we drink and that we use is recycled water. That is all the drainage water, for example, in London, that used to go into the Thames, all the wastewater, and made the whole place stink. All that has now been cleaned up in the Thames and now is beautifully clarified. Because water is water and we can remove the pollution from it. We take this water for granted in the regions where we live. We can't afford to take it for granted in desert regions like Rajasthan or North Africa or the Namibia Desert or in Africa, where all the rain that comes in Ireland in 1 year is delivered there in 3 months. In Zimbabwe, there are only 2 seasons, dry season, rainy season. And when the water comes within a few days, literally, all the things which were withered and dead all start springing life. And next time you turn the tap on, please think, thou art the taste in water. Radiance in the sun and moon. Last night was harvest moon, the silver moon, a fairly rare occurrence. This Purnima, this full moon, was there last night, unfortunately obscured by clouds. It is the reason why this Samhain is there, or this Halloween is there. It coincides with this full moon. Did anybody bother to have a look at it? People for ages and ages, for eons, have been staring at the moon and wondering about it. So it goes on, radiance in the sun. We don't have life of our own, it is all solar energy. Do we ever pause to think of it? In yoga practice, the first thing we do is Surya Namaskar. We make a salutation to the sun. It is not the sun itself, it is that which lights the sun. And thou art the syllable Om, the carried sound in ether. All these perceptions come as hard varieties, as crystallized varieties of subtle things called tanmatras, subtle waves. And the primordial one is this unmanifested thing, translated unfortunately as space, ether, and so on. This sum total of potential matter is there, we call it Akasha. And Akasha is vibrating imperceptibly, and then it combines and recombines and makes what we have here as the world. Thou art the strength in man, sweet fragrance in the earth, there's great strength within you. Great, huge resources of strength are within you. It is well known that somebody who has to deal with a physical crisis, let us say, a truck is on his leg, removes it, takes it, lifts it up. There's the famous story of the man who was stuck in a mountain climbing, and he had no option. Only one option was available to him, that was to cut his arm off. So with some kind of hacksawing motion, he managed to cut that off. Imagine. And then take it and get it sewn off. This resilience and strength in man, an ununderstood or very poorly understood, inexhaustible reserve of energy and power is available to you, and the yogis put this potentiality in a coiled up image. Something is coiled up within you. The daily thought I issued today was in connection with this, because there are many people that you come across now in the COVID crisis who are seeing it as a very terrible thing. Some people suffering from loneliness, some people suffering from a sense of isolation, some people losing hope in themselves. Where is the hope for all this? Raise yourself up by yourself. Don't lower yourself by yourself. You're your own best friend, your own worst enemy. And understand you have immense, immeasurable strength within you. And this strength is an avenue. Where does this strength and power come from? It comes from the fact of your own inner divinity. What religions calls God in a seemingly external way is there deep within you. It is your own intrinsic nature. Vedanta declares this without apology. In the very beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, it's stated. Sweet fragrance in the earth. When the rains have fallen, you can smell the earth, the sweetness of it. And this sweet fragrance in the earth, it is a farmer's friend. How the earth smells. The earth and the nose in Tantric Yoga, these are matched. What is this element that we call Prithvi, earth? It is there with a matching organ, the sense of smell. Don't worry about taste. Taste doesn't come if there's no sense of smell. Thou art brilliance in fire. Nowadays, you just flick a switch and the electricity comes on. We take this illuminating factor for granted. You see, when we no longer take these things for granted, then we have an internal welling sense of what we might call love, because it traces itself back to the source. God is love, because God is lovable, because all of this is His manifestation. Without highlighting these things, how can we stimulate this sense of love? How can we catch this understanding that things are being poured, God's grace is being poured through all these manifestations? Austerity in ascetics. Thou art our eternal seed, intelligence of the intelligence, splendor of the splendid, strength of the strong, devoid of slavery and passion. Thou art the desire for harmony, the origin of nature's force. We all want harmony, but we're all looking for things in a different area. When we start the Enneagram process, the first mistake everybody makes is the key value they identify is peace. At all costs? No, not at all costs. But this drive for harmony is why we exist. We're looking to balance everything. Work-life balance. There's a whole industry centered around it. The origin of nature's force, thou art sacrifice and the ritual. the offerings to all souls. Thou art the healing herbs, thou art the holy words. So you see this translation has taken mantras, holy words, healing herbs. The idea, if we study the Ramayana, we find how Rama gets wounded and how his brother Lakshmana goes off. Hanuman takes a whole mountain actually of herbs and come and take these herbs. All our modern medicine really is based on herbs, primarily from the Amazon jungle, but also herbs from elsewhere. It is said that every single spice used, say, in Indian cooking by itself has its medicinal value. Cinnamon is known as a cancer cure. It was investigated many decades ago by Manchester Hospital and various other research institutes. Thou art the strength of the strong, devoid of slavery and passion. When you strip slavery and passion away, then you have the greatest, the maximum strength in you. Sacrifice in the ritual, offerings of all souls. So like that, we can study these things. Let's take up the specific mythical references from 10th chapter. So it begins with an exhortation. Sri Bhagavan Vacha Vaya Eva Mahabhavo Srunu Pe Paramam Vachaha. Neither, once again, and see the epithet delivered, mighty armed. We have to remind ourselves that we are mightily armed with all the defense strategies at our disposal contained within this instrument called Antakar. Listen to my supreme word. And then he wishes for the welfare, and I shall speak to your absorbing delight, he goes on to say. When we observe all these manifestations around us, we can be absorbed in the delight of it. So he goes on. Those who don't know the origin, there are many, even including the gods who don't know my origin and so on. He goes on like this. Now he's saying, intelligence, wisdom, non-delusion, forbearance, truth, sense control, calmness, joy and sorrow, birth and death, fear and fearlessness, non-injury, equanimity, contentment, austerity, charity, fame, and obloquy. He gives a whole list of values. These different dispositions of beings arise from me alone. Let's think about that. All of this is worthy of meditation. It starts off, you see, buddhir jnanam asamoha. We're combining fourth and fifth stanzas here. Kshama satyam damaha kshamaha. You see, intelligence. Don't think man alone has intelligence. Man has an intellect, no doubt. You're using it now in listening to me and trying to understand and absorb what I'm saying and evaluating it for yourself. But other creatures have intelligence. Please don't tell me that things are inanimate, insentient, and unintelligent. You put a pendulum like this, it knows where the center of the earth is. Don't tell me it has no sentience. Don't tell me there is no intelligence. Don't tell me that the arrangement in the whole universe of tremendous balance, of exquisite beauty, exquisite arrangement, and wonderful harmony where nothing crashes into the other, the vastness of space, the whole arrangement tells us of intelligence. Don't tell me that an ant does not have intelligence. You and I can't work in communities in harmony. Bees do it, ants do it. All communities of beings do it. They work and operate in this systematic harmony. Who can work harder than any of these creatures? So there is this intelligence, but in man there is also wisdom and access to this wisdom. and we can see it. And wherever you see some manifestation of this Shakti, this power, know that this entity is there. That statement is also there in the Bhagavad Gita. Why is it that music has the power to deeply move us? Why is it that somebody who is successful, why it catches our imagination and uplifts us? Why is it that somebody we don't know, and yet their courage, their virtue uplifts us and inspires us? Somebody who is a self-sacrificing person. It is because we are attuned to that. We can say that in spiritual discipline, we want to do away with all our desires. This may be something of a wrong approach. It's not that we want to do away with them. We have to acknowledge them for what they are. The desire for pleasure is to get back to our pristine nature of bliss. Only the world sends us in a different direction. It takes our attention and inserts an egoistic motive with it. But behind it, what is behind it? Behind it is a search for happiness because it is our own nature. So all of these qualities mentioned in this fourth and fifth stanzas are there for us to cultivate, but also for us to observe this glory. Now he goes on to 7 great sages. This is the first reference to some unfamiliar territory for many. So how do we translate it?
Could I ask, just on the 4th and 5th stanzas, there's pairs. There are some pairs, like fear and fearlessness are mentioned, honor and dishonor.
Yes.
And the negatives are both sides to be seen as positive. Like, is there a function like for dishonor as well as honor, for fear as well as fearlessness? In a way, both sides are positive in a way.
Positive from this point of view, that you can't have one without the other.
Oh yes, they're intrinsically paired.
So how do we know that we should engender fearlessness? Because we know fear. And there are things to be feared. And fear is not a bad thing. It is only because of fear that we are able to manage our self-defense. Mm-hmm. So, but the supreme fearlessness comes from an aspect where there are no two. When there are no two, there is no second to fear. But that's not our experience. Our experience is duality. This high philosophy of non-duality, when people espouse it and negate any other position, they get into some difficulties. You see, because if I say, oh, why are you fearful? It's only one without a second. That doesn't really solve your practical problem. It's like banging your head and somebody saying, don't worry, it's not painful. Yes, it's painful. There's a lump on my head and I'm feeling it. Mm-hmm. So we have to take into cognizance something very practical. We have to acknowledge that there is a philosophy behind everything that by itself solves every problem when we go to it. But we also have to acknowledge in the beginning there's a problem. So we go through a process of separation and duality, and we elevate the mind. You see the language of the 6th chapter, raise the mind, raise himself, raise yourself. It means you're in a lower position. You're not immediately raised. You have to raise yourself. It's a process. So you have to highlight all of these things. See, so fear and fearlessness are there. You see, all of these have their opposite. If we want to engender contentment, it's because we are not in a contented position. We feel a discontent. So by inference, there's always the opposite. This understanding of good and bad and saying, well, bad is bad, evil is evil. Why is there evil in the world? Is because it's necessary. How will you contrast it with good? And this is the answer to an earlier question, you see, the COVID virus. Is it a punishment sent by a God that says, oh, I think we should send this to you because I'm not happy with mankind? Or the atheist with a skeptical attitude might say, you see this God, he's a vacillating entity, having nothing better to do, sitting bored in heaven, he decides, let me send a COVID virus and test out people's humane response. So a suggestion, is it there so that people can be more generous, be more empathetic, be more sympathetic, be more charitable? No. In a sense, no. In a sense, yes. In a sense, no. What sense, no? In the sense that things happen. In a sense that there are viruses, there are storms, there is destruction. There is creation and there is destruction, and you cannot have one without the other. And in between is something called life. There is birth, there is death. We can't say death is a misfortune. Death is simply the end of a series of events beginning with life or birth. It is as it is. Nature is like that. Nature necessarily has to operate like that. Nature has to have, in order to make a balance, it has to have a temporary up and a temporary down and a readjustment and like that and an equilibrium. And the whole of nature is a tug of war like this. There has to be gravitational pulling in. There has to be electrical energy pushing out. There has to be a positive. There has to be a negative. There has to be an electron. There has to be a positron. There has to be a male. There has to be a female. There has to be goodness. There has to be evil. There has to be light. There has to be darkness. Without the shade, how will you know what light is? So these are not seen in a morally judgmental way. Not in that way. It's an absolutely necessary part of life. And we understand it philosophically, because if you hold some kind of drama, like an annual Christmas pantomime, there has to be a villain. What kind of drama is it if there's not? There has to be a hero or heroine. There has to be a chorus. There has to be song. There has to be dancing. There has to be lighting. There has to be scenery. All of these are necessary components. Otherwise, how does the play continue? But Krishna in this Bhagavatam tells us, it's not a cruel joke on you. It is a play on myself. And you see, I am this vigor. Thou art all of this. I am this, says Krishna. I am time. I come as time. He is going from a position in to through to as I am this manifestation. You thought I was an adapter. Where does the adapter come from? It comes only from one entity, only from one source. There's only one thing, one without a second, looking like these differences. And how do we get the clue to it? All these manifestations and differences are signposts. Look at me, look at me, look at me. Did you see me? Did you notice me? Look at my glory within. So this is all this wonderful description of God's glory. Now, 7 sages are there in mythology because 7 is a sacred number, just as we explored last week that 9 is a sacred number because of its compounded 3 by 3 by 3. And 7 also is this beautiful balanced mathematical way in which the universe works. There are 7 days of the week. There are 7 notes in our harmonious music, whether you regard it as Sarigama Sa, Indian scale or raga, or whether you regarded as do, mi, re, do, mi, re, fa, so, and so on. So there is a certain mathematical rhythm. Now, if you take, for example, 1/7 fractionated, 1/7 fraction in its decimalized form, you'll get a certain pattern. When you say 2/7, you'll find the same pattern repeated with a different starting digit. And you can do it as many times as you like. So we have this 7 origin, and we have this understanding of 7 great sages, and one of them was understood to be Swami Vivekananda coming here. These are 7 creative factors that abound. And so we can take them either in a mythological way, but it's much better to take their original meaning, and also monos. We have to understand that time comes in different manvataras, that is different segments of time, regulated in a specific way. And all we need to understand by this is certain creative forces are there. We can personalize them, of course. There are 4 as well. And we don't have to, if we want, we can explore mythological understanding of these through the Puranas and so on. But the purport of it is much more important to understand. So there are these entities which are in charge of every creation and every creative process. Sub-offices, administrative offices in the universe. We can put them under this heading of administrative offices. And this is how we can translate it. But the more important thing is not that. Where do they come from? They were born of my mind, says Krishna. They all come from cosmic mind. We can bypass all these and go, oh, Lord, you are there. And use the others as creative, meditative stepping stones toward it. All of these manifestations are stepping stones toward this one position, cosmic mind. This cosmic mind is our personal God. We can also call this cosmic Christ. We can call it cosmic Buddha. We can call it the original word. We can call it the Logos. We can call it the Jesus. We can call it the Ramakrishna. And anybody dedicated to that will go to this world. So, endowed with my nature, how is it that this world seems to be alive? How is it that it is full of abundance and love? How is it that it is streaming and teeming with what we call collectively life? It is because it is of this one nature. And the clues are there. It's not that there's a disconnect. Not at all. We can see all the clues. Let us take some simple ones mentioned before. One question that remains unanswered in modern science forever and a day. Why is there such a thing as gravity? That is, why do things fall to the floor? Why do things fly off? Why is there electrical energy? Why isn't there something else? And if we take this seriously, we have to say, well, now let us see. When you don't have time and space and motion or any of these things, when you take all of this away, what remains? What remains is the undivided, all in terms of negation. The undivided, the unchanging, the infinite is what you have when you take all of those things away. But how do we know this? Are there any clues to it? Is it simply a zero or nothing? No. By understanding the undivided, we can understand gravity. Gravity wants to make things undivided. Electrical energy wants to make things infinite. And why we have this tug of war is because of this. And without this, we don't have any life, but it is a very symptom. It is the very signature of this undivided. How is it that we have time? because this is a symptom, a signature of the unchanging. You see, it all makes perfect sense. And it comes to us as inertia. Inertia is a force that wants things to stop, change. It's a signature of the unchanging. So it comes from all one cosmic mind. And all the rest of the 10th chapter, 10th, 11th, and 15th chapter, and all the other manifestations described have to bear this one thing in mind. All these are variations of, or thought manifestations of one supreme thinker that we call cosmic mind. And so it goes on. Madbhava manasa jata yesam loga ima prajaha. And from them have descended all the creatures of the world. And when we say creatures, we mean all manifestations from this cosmic mind. Is described poetically as from cosmic mind to a clump of grass. This is all the creatures, all things in our observable universe and even outside that. See, Halloween we have celebrated, the ancient festival of Samhain. It's understood that there are beings that we cannot see, we cannot touch, we cannot interact with in a normal way. But there's a period of the year, they say, where this thin line is removed. And so spirits are bound, and part of them would be our kith and kin. And then the Christians brought in a syncretized aspect of it and made it all souls and all saints. But the same theme being carried on. He who knows etam vibhutim yogam cha mama yoviti tattvataha. He who knows truthfully this glory and power of mine becomes established in unshakable union with me. That's the purpose of it. Why should we see God's glory everywhere? Is to see this one thing and to experience this one mystic union, this unshakable union with me, because having attained it, you can't easily shake it again. You can't get out of it. And just to make sure we understand, he says that of this there's absolutely no doubt whatsoever. Then, aham sarvasya prabho mataha. I am the source of all, sarvam pravartati. From me, all things evolve. Whether you take things, any being, anywhere, and don't understand who these beings, a variety of beings might be, they are still in an evolving state. They are still subject to change. But evolving toward what? This great, wonderful, language that this French priest and paleontologist uses. This is Father Teilhard de Chardin. What he says, he uses this wonderful language of evolution and involution, a kind of feeling that everything is unfolding and folding back on itself, what the great scientist David Bohm calls the implicate order of things and the explicate order of things, and the folding and enfolding and folding back on itself. What a wonderful, wonderful holistic image is portrayed in this. So what is the source? Every time you see any object with the eyes, every time you hear anything with the ears, any time anything impinges on the skin due to the pressure of the skin and the environment, everything that is changing within time, you can trace it back to one thing, there's a source. And everybody wants to trace a source. You see, people spend many dozens and dozens and dozens of years, maybe even now it's uncertain, what is the source of the Nile? We should never be in denial. What is the source of the Nile? People wanted to trace it back to the source. The spiritual adventure, this kind of adventurous spirit that is there in the pioneers of the dark continent of Africa, not so long ago, was to find what is the source of something. We should all be on that same journey. And we should all have this indication of the source by whatever we see. Everything we see is a manifestation. It is not limited. These manifestations that are described in these various chapters are all just examples because they are unlimited. So from me, all things evolve. Today, people are asking this question about biological evolution. Where are things evolving from? What is our abiogenesis? What is the origin of this evolution process? And can we replicate it? But the answer is no, because it's coming way, way back to a source. And that source is God. So those people who are wise, they know this, they know all of this. Those people who are foolish are really exploring or trying to explore only Maya, actually. What is science? An exploration only of Maya. And they adore me with all their heart, you see. How do we get this love, this original question? It is by contemplating these various manifestations, tracing them back to their source with a sense of understanding and wisdom, with a sense of faith. And when we do that, we access this love. This is how we engender love of God. Now, these manifestations and tracing them back to the source, only the wise people can do it. Not even the gods and the demons, powerful entities, always in a juxtaposition and opposition to each other. They don't know these manifestations. That is what keeps them going. So what are we saying? The universe itself keeps going because it doesn't know it. It's kept under the spell of ignorance. So truly, you alone know yourself by yourself. You see, unless you understand these preliminary passages, you won't understand the rest. So, Swayam eva tvana tvanam vetartam purushottama. O Purushottama, O creator of beings, O Lord of beings, O God of gods, ruler of the world, this is part and parcel of it. This is encapsulated in these divine glories that are put out in English. So it is now 12 o'clock. I'll just conclude. Then, what more divine glories will be there after going through this preliminary? And I tell you of all these, I am the self. That's the primary thing. I am the self. Aham Atma, Kura Kesha Sarva Bhuta Sayastita. I am the self, seated in the hearts of all beings. Not just man, all beings. I am the beginning. I am the middle. I am the end of all beings. This is like the COVID virus. What have we to fear? I am the beginning. I am the middle. I am the end. What a pity, people are born, people live, people die. No, I am the beginning. I am the end. I am the middle. The language of Christianity or language of Shraddha. I am the Alpha and I am the Omega. I am the beginning and I am the end. You think it's something else. No. So we have to cultivate a wisdom that understands this. And then I'll just explain. I am the Adityas. You see, in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, the question is asked, how many are the devas, the deities? And the answer comes, 33,000 and 33, see, and then it's reduced, it goes on and on. because all of those things are manifestations. Hindus make that mistake. They say, oh, we have millions of gods. No, you never studied the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad where it says there's only one entity. All the rest are just manifestations of that one thing. But we can boil it down to a number of significant categories. 8 adityas. Aditya, the thing that shines. Aditya, we can trace it back to the mother of the universe, Aditi. But the adityas, there are 8 adityas. What are these 8 adityas? These are the things that shine. I am Vishnu of luminaries. That is, I'm the entity that pervades and lights everything up. Vishnu is a sustainer. It is by his light that everything shines. This is how we begin the guided meditation. Let us put ourselves in the presence of the source of life, source of light, source of love. We are tracing a trinity. The source of life is existence itself. Why are things alive or seemingly alive? It is because that supreme entity is life itself or existence itself. It is Sat. Why are things bound by intelligence on a pattern, a behavioral pattern that exhibits a great deal of intelligence and adaptation? In species, if you block one avenue to find another, this we call the evolution process. This we call modification, descent by modification, Darwin's term. It is because there is a light. We can call this Vishnu. And how is it that there is this great love? It's because there is Ananda. We may think that Shiva, the auspicious one, is dedicated to destruction. Is dedicated to destruction of our ignorance. And when that is destroyed, we only have this bliss. And how do we do it? We do it through Shakti, through energy. Shiva is there active only because of Shakti. Shakti is the whole energy of the universe. So of luminaries, the radiant sun, no mythology about that. And I am Marichi of the Maruts, that is, of the things that sweep through like a great wind. Now we're experiencing this Aiden. Of all those things, I'm the supreme one that moves things. And of the heavenly bodies, I am the moon. That is, everything that you see that seems to shine is only a reflection. When we look into the sky, the brightest thing we often see is Venus. But what is Venus? Venus is a rocky planet. It doesn't shine by itself. It is only because of that divinity that makes things shine. And then, of course, we come back to, we didn't complete these 33 Adityas, 8 Adityas. 11 Rudras. And we have the, I said 8 Adityas, I beg your pardon. 12 Adityas, I beg your pardon. 12 Adityas. And then 11 Rudras. And then 8 Vasus. Vasu means dwelling, a dwelling place, things that occupy space. Now we can understand, oh, it's space and everything manifested in space. And 8 Vasus because, forgive me, I said 8 Adityas, I meant 12 Adityas. So the 8 Vasus indicating all the directions, north, south, east, west, and the intermediate directions come to 8. We leave out up and down. And then you really easily see when there are 12 Adityas, 12 months in a year. This is time. Now we have time and we have space. What are the 11 Rudras? These are all the various interacting senses that we have. All the things that actually perish. They are born and they perish. These are the Rudras. Rudra essentially distilling itself into Shiva. Now we have the modern, comparatively modern Hindu Trinity. So we have the things that the pervading through space. We have the rhythm of time in existence. And we have all that encompassed in its destruction. And why 11 is there is because it is short of the evenness of 12. And 11 means that you can encompass all the factors that are there in the observable universe, and you can put them into 11 categories. But these are all categories. So we can even understand these things if we study them carefully. He goes on to say, see, that I am the Rudras, I am Shankara, like that. And then we come on to beings such as Yakshas, Rakshasas, and so on. And what that is, of course, are the various forces in you, that are to do with pleasure seeking and to do with temperaments and all of these things. Now, you asked a question, and I would like next week to pursue this so that we can pick up from there and explore these various meanings of these, why we say Rudras, why we give the epithet Shankara, what we mean by the Yakshas, what we mean by the Rakshasas, and all of these things. And Vasus are there. But of course, all of these other things come from these primary categories. That is the Adityas, the 12 Adityas, the 8 Vasus, and the 11 Rudras. So I had to make that correction because mistakenly I had said, 8 Adityas, no, 12 Adityas, 12 months of the year, of course. Om Shanti, 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 peace, peace, peace be unto all.